Oh no.
No? No?
Kings of Chaos is Kings of Chaos is a collection of characters, celebration of rock and roll, and all my friends I've met over the years. So it's never the same lineup twice. And I'm basically the only member of the band that's consistent. Um, so this first track that I put out, Judgment Day, was my old bandmates who have also been involved in Kings of Chaos. So we toured, went to South America under the name Kings of Chaos with Slash and Duff. Dave Kushner has performed with Kings of Chaos, who was in Velvet Revolver. And this was a track that I wanted to put out for a while, and I've been kind of sitting on it. And I'm singing lead vocals and playing drums. So I thought it was cool to sort of like announce the band like that. And then the next few songs might have a different singer. And maybe I'll sing another one. I'm not sure yet, but I'm just starting the recording process after Thanksgiving of the rest of the album. And I got a bunch of cool people coming out here to the desert where I built a recording studio that I finished in October. And we're ready to rock. So I'm excited about that. And the album will kind of unfold over the next 6 to 8 months. Recording and mixing and making videos and all the fun stuff you get to do around an album.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
basically reaching out to some folks and saying, "Hey, you want to come? Be in the band?" Or you have a list of guys or girls that you'd love to be in there
Oh
with.
yeah.
Yeah,
Kings of Chaos is a bucket list for me. I basically make a phone call and I call people and say, "Hey, you want to play?" And I've learned in this business you get one or two answers, yes or no.
who's the
If
who's
they
the
don't,
top of
if they don't reply on email, which is like a new thing, that means no.
ah
So if they don't really like you at all, they don't reply. But if they like you, they at least say, "Hey, I'm available."
I think we've all been through that at one time or another.
But
Who's on the top?
if
Who's
they're like
on?
if they're non-confrontational and a bit passive aggressive, typically they just don't reply, which means they have a hard time saying no.
Yeah,
And I'm sorry, and I like to pray for them, but I'm a person that gets an email, and if I don't reply, I just really feel like a heel. It's like
hmm
I just I can't just ignore. It's
hmm
basically a new language that we have now, right? You used to write a
it is.
letter
Yeah,
or a postcard,
yeah.
and if someone wrote you a really nice letter, you'd write them a thank you letter back or send
Mm-hmm.
those days are kind of come and gone. So, but
Uh-huh.
in general, I've had a really good response to making the record from a lot of great people. I'm not going to say who yet because at press time, nothing's on the books as far as like in the process of recording the record.
Yeah,
Until I have the track done with the vocal on it, I can kind of sneak it out. But I actually want to surprise people with what's coming,
yeah,
and I'm really excited about it.
yeah. I am like you. I'd rather have a no than a nothing. So I'd rather have a no than a non-response email. Who's on the top of your list? Who is somebody that you really want for your
Jimi
band?
Hendrix, but Jimi Hendrix.
I should have said living.
Oh, uh, I would say David Bowie. Oh, damn.
uh,
Lost so many greats, you know?
yeah.
There's a lot of young kids out there I'm kind of sussing out. Like these young,
Okay.
I feel like if I can make a nice mixture of the classic guys and then
Uh-huh.
bring in some young energy and sort of like nurture what's out there for rock and roll right now. There's not a lot of bands.
Mhm.
Like I really like the Struts. I like a band called Rival Sons. I like I love the Killers. I would say they're probably an alternative rock band, and they're not kids anymore.
Mhm.
They've been around 15 years now, but I look
Mhm.
at them as they're younger than me. So
Yeah.
there's just a lot of kind of I mean, if you look at rock and roll from where I come from, there was like a group of contenders, we were like all sort of in the same family. And
Mm.
I feel like it's a little bit like kind of not as much as it used to be as like that's rock and roll. And so I'm going to really try to sort of see what I could mesh into the project that isn't necessarily what people would expect.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I'm not saying I'm going like Harry Styles, even though I'd be more than happy to have him on my record.
Yeah, yeah,
There's girls like Miley Cyrus who I feel have energy that's rock. She comes from pop, but she's got an energy that's rebellion, and that means rock and roll to me. And I think
yeah,
she's cool. I love her.
yeah. Well,
And women.
you've already done a record with my friend Cherie Curie, so
Oh yeah, well I produced that album.
I love
I
her
put
voice. Yeah,
I played
I think
drums
her
on it.
voice has gotten better as she's aged. So I don't know if
Well, it's for her, it's
yeah,
like riding a bike. Her
yeah,
voice is her voice. It's there. And I'm really excited that she's finally going out and touring. I saw that she announced some tour dates,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
you know.
Uh-huh. So let's reflect just a little bit because I know you have a birthday tomorrow.
I
Um,
do. Oh yeah.
I had one Monday.
42. Can you believe it?
I had one Monday, and let's see. Okay, so that made me 47. Yeah.
Oh, you're a Scorpio.
Yeah.
We're the love sign. You know that, right?
That's right. Yes, that is correct. So reflect a little over the past 62 years. Some highlights and lowlights, or if you could go back
That's
and
when they used to pull you out of your mother's womb in very bright lights and spank you on your ass. They wake you up like now they like now I had a baby, it's like doula and like, incense and I just remember getting spanked on my butt. I was traumatized from that point forward.
wow, you've got a great memory.
And I mean, kid growing up, in the 60s with two brothers, older brothers that turned me on to rock and roll. Growing up in the mid 60s, seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, you know, the time was just all about freedom and like learning. There was so much mystery and excitement in the air, and it was all sort of, wild. And then the 70s hit, and there I was getting into my, early pubescent era of teens. And here I was in the mid 70s as a teenager, I mean, what a great era of music. And I just latched on to it because, I loved, and I still say to this day, the greatest era of music, in my opinion, was the 70s. You had so much diversity from
Mm.
bands like Earth, Wind, and Fire, Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Sly and the Family Stone, so much uh cool music coming from all different genres. Leonard Skinner, and then you go to Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I was into all of it. Um, and I just learned my craft by listening and watching bands and going to concerts when concerts were $5. you know,
Mm-hmm.
you could buy a four finger lid of weed for $15 and get a ticket for $5. That was the time, man.
Mm-hmm.
And that, out of that, luckily I was a kid that grew up in California. So I headed up to Hollywood. And as soon as I was already going there and ditching, I told my mom I was going to my buddy's house and we would tool up the 5 freeway all the way to the 101 and jump off in Hollywood. And just at 14, 15 years old, I was on the streets of Sunset Boulevard. And to me, it was like Candyland. It was like Disneyland for rock and roll. And I was captivated, and I got the bug. As soon as I got out of high school, I just headed straight to Hollywood. I was, 17, 18 years old. My parents left on a sailing trip. They bought a boat. My two brothers had moved out of the house. And there I was. As soon as I graduated high school, my mother announces that they're selling the house and they're going on a sailing trip. She said, you could come with us or you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to stay shoreside. So with about $100 in my pocket, I headed out into the world on my own. And I think it's the best thing I could have ever done. I didn't stay close to home for 1 second. Um, a lot of kids maybe are afraid to leave the house that early on, but man, I was so excited just to have freedom. I was like,
Yeah.
and
At
freedom was like,
14 or 15,
no, 18 years old.
18.
I
Right.
graduated high school a little bit early. I got out on a GED.
Okay.
So as soon as that I hit the 18 mark, my parents split. And I was basically my stepfather and my mom went on a boat for like 4 or 5 years. I couldn't even get a hold of them. There was no cell phones in those days.
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
was basically, you know, do or die kind of thing. And it was fine. I lived with five guys in a 1 bedroom apartment. I didn't care.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
Um, You
Mature
know,
rather quickly, become
yeah,
independent
well,
rather
just got,
quickly.
got to learn about how to like,
Mhm.
hustle and struggle
Mhm.
and then along came you know, some bands. I started recording, and then obviously I got in the cult in the late '80s. That was about 10 years before I got that gig. I was in my late 20s. I did a lot of work before that. I did tours, played top 40, did whatever I could to make ends meet. In
Yeah.
those days, though, rent was like $100,
Yeah.
like, oh, I need to make $100 to pay rent,
Mhm.
150. And for people living in one spot, I mean, I'll pitch in and even then, it sounded like a lot of money, $100
Mhm.
was.
Was really.
And I had a crappy little car, but I didn't care. I had a little Rambler station wagon I bought for $100.
Mhm. So
But then I got
so
my big break. I got my big break with the
there
cult.
you go. Big break. What was the big break?
Well, the biggest break I got was joining the band, the Cult, in the late '80s. Then I was on a tour bus. I was getting a salary of decent proportion, and I thought I had arrived. There I was. I had my own hotel room. I didn't care. I didn't have any place to live. I didn't care. I had a suitcase and some clothes, and I was on tour with a rock and roll band, and it was the greatest time of my life. And then I could have remained in that band until Guns N' Roses came along, and then I jumped ship and joined that band, and that's when things got crazy. Um,
Mhm.
the band was on top of their game. We were playing stadiums, and started to kind of break down a little bit emotionally and spiritually. I was kind of it was a little too crazy, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But
I
that brings me full circle to where I am now. It's like I
mm,
went through that process, and then I joined Velvet Revolver. We had huge success in 2004 to like 2008,
mhm.
and then the
Yeah,
last
I know
12,
that,
14.
Slash, I think, said in his book, if you've ever wondered what the sound of a band breaking up sounds like, listen to Guns N' Roses' cover of "Sympathy for the Devil."
It was the last song we ever recorded, and it was very weird because I remember we all went in the studio separately. Me, Slash, and Duff recorded the basic track, and then we didn't see the other guys in the band, and they finished it, and then that was the last song. Ended up on a soundtrack for Interview with the Vampire, Brad Pitt, and I think Christian Slater.
Anne Rice.
Anne Rice book, correct.
Mhm.
And that was the last song we ever did. And that was David Geffen asking us to get back to work because we were starting to go our separate ways, and there was some hostility within the ranks. So we jumped in and recorded that. And then that was pretty much the end of it. And that was a weird time for me because I was like, oh shit, now what do I do? You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah, yeah,
here I was,
yeah.
playing stadiums, being tooled around in limos and flying on private jets. And then I was back to like normal life, except for I had the moniker Matt Sorum from Guns N' Roses. And to this day, that lingers with me. People identify me as that guy from that band. And it's been a very good feather in my cap.
Mm.
Something that's very representative of culture and the times, and people understand that band. It had just a sensibility that translated to a lot of different demographics.
Mhm.
You know, you could
Mhm.
ask an older person, you can ask a younger person, you can ask my grandmother, who's
Mhm.
not alive anymore. She was 106 when she passed, but she'd say, Maddie, I saw you on CNN News with the band Guns N' Roses, and they say that you are bad boys. Is that true? And I'm like, no, Grandma. She said, well, they say you do drugs and alcohol. I said, you know, I drink, Grandma. It's okay. But I'm your grandmother, and I'm telling you, I'm worried about you. And so that's
But
how big it was when
yeah.
grandma's called.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, and misconceptions all the way around, I'm sure, about, Guns N' Roses, especially naming a band Guns N' Roses in the beginning. But there were misconceptions about the band, or were there some of the
Everything my grandma said was true.
everything
And
she said was true?
but I didn't want to break her heart and hurt her. So I just said, Grandma, it's going to be okay. Right? Because we were wild and crazy and everything you're supposed to be at that particular time in rock and roll. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It was like, I wouldn't do it any other way. If I had to do it all over again, I'd be the same exact guy, except for maybe I wouldn't. I'd be a little bit, would have taken a little of my ego out of it because I feel like when you're young and you're successful and you have a lot of people around you telling you how great you are,
Mhm.
sometimes it can get inside your psyche and then you start believing it. Looking back in retrospect, that's the only thing I would change. I would try to be maybe a little bit more of a peacekeeper, a little bit more communicative and understanding of other people, accepting other people for who they are. You know,
Mhm.
it's like Axl Rose is one of the greatest frontmen of all time. And in my opinion, now looking back, the guys that I worked with as singers are that way because of where they come from and the demons that are inside and follow them around. I think a lot of musicians, it's not a cakewalk when you're in a band of that nature and has that much validity. It's there's a lot of passion and a lot of power that goes into playing that kind of music to big crowds of people. It's not like, oh, I'm going to just jump on stage and we're going to have a nice day. It's going to be great, isn't it?
Mhm.
Not like that at all.
Mhm.
It's not like just walking up there. Oh, okay, let's play some rock.
Mhm.
Not how it happens. And
And
the things that were going on around the band made for a great rock and roll show, right?
mhm.
It's like all that crazy energy that you heard about and everything that went into it.
And maybe a lot of that goes into it is, personally, like you had maybe the family situation and things like that, maybe go into it too, as far as uh, uh,
I think if you look at most entertainers
mhm.
that of that nature that excel to be great, right? Where does that come from?
Mhm.
Mine came from an early upbringing and maybe some resentment of
Mhm.
like it was non-believers. So that made me fight even harder. It's like when you tell a kid,
Mhm.
hey, you can't do that. And
Mhm.
you're like, yes, I can.
Mhm.
That's all of a sudden when you have self-belief, when someone's telling you, oh, I don't think so. I don't think you're very good at that. Are you
Yeah.
sure? Maybe you should try a different profession.
Yeah.
So everyone's going to have an opinion,
Mhm.
right? Everyone's got an opinion of what they think you should do. But the difference is when you believe in yourself, nobody can tell you anything.
Right.
So and I say to young musicians, I say, do you believe in yourself? What do I do? How do I make it? Work extra hard, harder than everybody else, and believe in yourself. And
Mhm.
don't listen to the naysayers. Even if they say, oh, I don't think this music is very good. Do you think it's good? Yeah, I do. Okay, then go for
Mhm. And the
it.
negativity, the people that are being negative don't realize that that's what, drives uh, certain people to succeed,
Yeah.
drives them even harder. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking from experience also.
Mhm.
So, what's the next single about? Do you have the idea for that at least? I know I'm not supposed to know who's singing on it.
It's going to be a mid-tempo rock song.
Okay. Mid-tempo rock song. Well,
And
I
most
appreciate
of
that
the
description.
lyrical content behind this record will probably be celebratory. Because look, we have a lot to celebrate. We just made it through very trying times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get in there and go, ooh, doom and gloom. Nah. Like Judgment Day, the lyrics behind that are based on what happens when this all ends? Where are you at? What are you doing with your life to make a difference? And it's all a bit based around a car. But the metaphor of the car is where are you driving? Where are you going to? And in that video that I made, in the end, what are they going to say about you? And that's really all we have to look forward to.
Well, I've
And
been listening to it in the morning and it gets me going.
well, it's a barn burner, as we'd say. So,
It
I put it out because I just thought, oh man, it's making the right statement. In the old days, we'd put out a hard rock song first, driving rock and roll,
is.
driving song. And then second, you do like the mid-tempo rocker. And then third, you'd come with like a big ballad.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe I'll come with a ballad. I don't know yet.
I don't
I
know.
think,
One of my favorites, November Rain. So yeah.
yeah, that was a big animal,
Uh,
that song. Over 1 billion views on YouTube.
yeah. Yeah. The drumming was great. So
Thank you.
I know it was controversial. Yeah. Yeah.
The drumming.
Yeah. So I've read.
Some drummers have messed with me about it, but I say to them,
Mhm.
I say, go ahead and try and do a ballad. Go for it. I
Mhm.
mean, everything was intentional on that song is what I played. And that was based on this tom fill. But I I believe I played the same tom fill 21 times. And from what another drummer once told me on Twitter, which I never counted, but I did realize that that it made that impression on them as a drummer. So I really got my point across. So my point was, it's not about fancy pants fills. It's about being part of something that's a great song, and the song needed that as sort of a hook. The
Mhm.
drums were a hook in that song. Every time you heard pop boom boom, it was a musical statement that I just played, and I played it throughout Use Your Illusion. That same fill, based on especially the trilogy of Don't Cry, Estranged, and November Rain. I kind of tied them all together, and I was very intentional on why I did that. And me and Axl talked about it, and we were listening to Elton John, "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me," and we knew that we needed this kind of big bombastic ballad type thing. And I said, I'm going to do a big thing on the toms as a marker. He said, yeah, signature. My whole thing with like setting up songs was signature. What's the statement? It's like, you could be mine. I came in with that big fill,
Mhm.
and I went big tom thing. And it just captivated, it captured everyone. And so we used to discuss that. We'd say, who's taking the intro? Make it good,
Mhm.
because you got about 10 seconds to grab everyone's attention,
Yeah.
especially nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't lollygag,
Right.
you know,
Make the statement. Make the
impact.
make
So
it.
Slash would come up with great intros. I mean, listen to Sweet Child of Mine. I mean, it's one of the greatest intros ever.
Yeah, it is.
And you're like, what is that? And you're like,
Mhm.
you're in.
Mhm.
So we would do that kind of stuff between us. Who's got the intro? And then I'd try something. So it was
Yeah.
a great time. We had a really great chemistry, and we were able to converse like that.
Yeah. You miss that?
No, I mean, I have it with other musicians in a different way. I just did Billy Gibbons' record it came out last summer. One of the greatest experiences of my life because it was
Mhm.
so open. We made a record together in a
Mhm.
room, Billy, I'd say, Billy, what do you got? He'd have a riff. Of course, he'd have a riff. And then we would write the lyric and we would write the music. And he'd say, he would, he would show me what to play on the drums sometimes. And I'd say, hey, it was like just a great conversation musically.
Mhm.
He'd say, Matt, play the bell. Ding, 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 ding. And I go, okay. He's an educational guy. Billy Gibbons is one of the greatest living guitar players. And I
Mm.
respect him. And I'm not going to be like, hey, man, don't tell me how to play the drums. I'd be like, please tell me how to play the drums. He'd say, Matt, don't play a flam. As simple as that. You go, hit it with one stick. I'm like, I get it. He didn't
Yeah.
like flams. He didn't like that. Go, like simple.
Yeah.
Like, wow,
Yeah.
that's incredible. The impact. I'm still learning
Yeah.
from great,
He's
like,
great. He's great addition to the video. I tell you, when I first heard him, I thought it was Wolfman Jack.
well, he was based on Cleavon Little. Cleavon Little was the DJ in a movie called Vanishing Point.
Mm.
And he sounds like Wolfman Jack, who I loved. And he's
Yeah.
back out here on the radio here in Palm Springs. You know, Wink Martindale is out here.
Mhm.
And we have a show, and they brought back Wolfman Jack. They bought all the rights to it. And they played it on the radio here, and I listened to it in my old car. And there was a movie, 1971, Barry Newman racing across the country in a Challenger, Dodge Challenger. And Cleavon Little was this DJ, kind of helping guide him through this procession of police chases and all this stuff. So I took the character and I said to Billy, I said, can you play a Wolfman Jack meets Cleavon Little? And you're kind of guiding me into my spiritual destiny. And you're going to play the Reverend Willie G. He goes, sounds cool. Let's do it.